In this session, we are going to discuss some ideas related to novel in the modern age. During the 18th and 19th century, novel made considerable progress as a literary genre in English literature. During the Romantic Age, even though poetry was flourishing, novelists also find their state. For example, novelists like Walter Scott, famous for his Waverley novels, Nathaniel Hawthorne from America, and in England, Gothic novel was a very famous and popular form of literature during the Romantic period. And Castle of Otranto, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein are some novels among the category of Gothic novel. And even in Romantic period itself, Jane Austen's famous domestic novels, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Mansfield Park, these novels were critically acclaimed and popular in the same place. After the Romantic Age, Victorian era, fiction was at its very peak. Charles Dickens' novels were celebrated not only in England but also in America. David Copperfield, Martin Chuzzlewit, Barnaby Rudge, Old Curiosity Shop, Oliver Twist. So all these novels were celebrated. Apart from Charles Dickens, there was William Makepeace Thackeray, his famous novel being The Vanity Fair, where he satirized the snobbish Victorian society and the Victorian morality. In the category of Victorian writers, novelists, we should also remember the Bronte sisters, Wuthering Heights, Agnes Grey, and Jane Eyre. So the name of Bronte sisters are also a name that you should remember in the development of novels during the Victorian era and leading to the modern era. During the last period or segment of the Victorian era, there were a group of novelists whom we can call as a transitional novelist leading to the modern period. Novelists like Samuel Butler, George Meredith, Oscar Wilde, and Thomas Hardy, they wrote their majority of the novels during the last period of the Victorian era, and they discussed issues which were relevant during the Victorian era and Victorian literature, but they showed a promise of modernity in their novels. They, as I said, they focused on social matters, morality, and religion in their novels, but they were lacking the kind of experimental adventure that the modern novelists were to be incorporated in their novels. The 20th century novel during the modern era was a crucial step in the development of modern English literature. The literary output during the modern era was huge, and the number of writers, whether it is novelists or poets, the number vary greatly. For the academic purpose, we can divide or conveniently divide the modernist novels or modern novels into Edwardian novelists and the novelists of the Georgian period. During the Edwardian period, novelists like Henry James, Joseph Conrad, Rudyard Kipling, James Joyce, H.G. Wells, E.M. Forster, these novelists were at the peak of their abilities. In the Georgian period, there were novelists like J.B. Priestley, Somerset Maugham, etc. Georgian writers, they are often considered as writers who stick on to the traditional way of writing rather than plunging into the modern experimentation of James Joyce and Virginia Woolf and the likes. During the early part of the 20th century, the psychological novel was in vogue, especially after the publication of Sigmund Freud's The Interpretation of the Dreams in 1900. Novelists like James Joyce, D.H. Lawrence, and Dorothy Richardson and Virginia Woolf, these novelists explored the human psyche in their novels. The stream of consciousness is a form of novel which was very famous and very sought after during the modern period. The term stream of consciousness was introduced by William James, a psychologist and brother of Henry James. William James believed that the human consciousness cannot be analyzed in fragments, it flows as the stream of consciousness. So the chronological sequence of event in narrative become outdated. Hence the novelist captured the sense of time as it actually operates in the human consciousness. William James believed. They devised new techniques like interior monologue and stream of consciousness to unravel the working and the complexity of the human mind. When we do a brief analysis of the trends or the themes in modernist novel, we can generally see that they are anti-romantic and anti-Victorian in its spirit. The modernist novelists, they believed that the existing literary traditions were inadequate to represent the complexity and dire situation modern world find itself in. In 18th and 19th century literature, they focus on society, but the modern literature, they focused on individual as the center of things. The impact of the First World War was huge and it shattered the existing norms of the Western civilization. New philosophy and psychological advancement of thoughts like existentialist philosophy and psychoanalytic philosophy, and the influence of philosophers like Nietzsche and psychologists like Freud all contributed and influenced the modernist literature. Modernist literature was also characterized by a freedom of expression, a freedom to write openly, freedom to express even the most taboo subjects during the previous ages, and it led to a very frank and candid exploration of sexual themes in the modernist novels. As suggested by the stream of consciousness technique, a manipulation of plot became a style statement during the modernist era, especially in interior monologue and stream of consciousness novels.